Well, thank you all for joining us this evening. My name is Gregory Eisenberg. I am the co-founder and president of the Commission on Local Debates. Today, we have House District 44. House District 44 is currently represented by Representative Geraldine Thompson, and there are over 150,000 residents in District 44. And the district encompasses much of West Orange County, including Winter Garden, Windermere, and Oakland. District 44 is roughly split between Republicans, Democrats, and nonpartisan voters. The top industries are hospitality, entertainment, retail, healthcare, administrative jobs. This race is on the general election ballot for November 3rd, and the winner will serve for 2 years. Today, we welcome the candidates to represent Florida State House District 44. We'll let them introduce themselves. They have 2 minutes to do so. So, Mr. Portigliotti, we'll start with you.
Thank you, Greg. Good evening, everyone. And thank you to the Commission on Local Debates for having us and for the opportunity to share. Again, my name is Bruno Portigliotti, and I'm running for the Florida House of Representatives in District 44. I've lived in District 44 since 1999. I attended Southwest Middle School, Dr. Phillips High School here. I went on to USF to study political science and Spanish. I went on to law school afterwards, and I also got an MBA. And after all of that, I came back home to help build the family businesses. So this is my community. This is a community that I love, that I've been a part of for a long time. And I saw an opportunity to serve this community, to represent this community because, I've had the privilege to live the American dream. Our family moved here from a different country in 1999. I didn't speak a single word of English when I came here. I started out bussing tables on Restaurant Row. Worked at Universal Studios, had a lot of different jobs, and today I have the privilege of the opportunity to manage our family businesses, to lead a private college, and also to develop and operate senior living facilities in the Central Florida region. And I'm running to protect this American dream. We came because of safety, because of opportunities. We came because of hope. And I want to ensure that future generations, that our kids, that your kids, and that future generations have the same opportunity that I had to live this American dream. Now more than ever, I believe that I'm uniquely qualified to represent District 44 because of my business background, but more so than that, because of my desire to serve, my desire to help my community. I have been doing so for a long time. I have served on several civic boards, civic organizations, and my greatest passion in life is to give back, is to serve. It's a passion for people, and that's why I'm doing this. So I'm excited to be here with you guys to be able to share. And again, thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Portigliotti. Now on to you, Representative Thompson.
Thank you, and good evening for the invitation. I am a mother. I have 3 children who all grew up in House District 44 and graduated from West Orange High School. I am a wife to the Honorable Emerson R. Thompson Jr., and I have 4 granddaughters, and I want to create a reality for those 4 young women where the barriers that I faced in this community and in this country have been torn down. And that is what I have been working on all of my adult life. I am a former academician. I taught in schools here and helped prepare the next generation of young people in House District 44 in Orange County Public Schools and as an administrator at Valencia College. I'm also the founder of the Wells-Built Museum of African American History and Culture, which operates in a site that was listed in the Green Book, which was the subject of the Academy Award-winning movie, Green Book. It was a Black-owned and operated hotel, and there we're able to elevate the history that has been lost or overshadowed of a significant population here in the state of Florida, and that's African Americans. I am a person who, according to the Orlando Sentinel, I am tethered to my constituents and to my community, and I am approachable, I'm effective, I have the experience, having first been elected to the Florida House in 2006, to the Florida Senate in 2012, and now back in the House in 2018. And I think during this particular time, it is very important for someone to represent House District 44 who is empathetic, who is effective, and who knows how to get things done across lines. I'm in the minority in the legislature, but I've been affected.
Great. Thank you both for the introduction. Now we will start with the debate. Each question you will have 90 seconds to answer. And if needed, there will be 30 seconds of rebuttal time for anybody that is evoked by name. And we will start with question one. Mr. Portigliati, House District 44 covers much of West Orange County with many residents working in low-wage hospitality and tourism jobs. What can be done and what should be done at the state level to address low wages without increasing unemployment?
That that is something that I've been hearing a lot as I talk to voters. We had the opportunity to visit thousands of voters in the primary. I just came out of a primary, and in that opportunity that I had, I heard a lot of stories of families, of individuals that are struggling. But they're struggling mainly because of the situation, the crisis that we're living, the economic crisis due to the pandemic. And I think that there's a lot that needs to be done to address these issues. But I think when it comes to the hospitality industry, we are going to have to take a different approach now. We have to understand that things have changed. It's probably not going to get back to normal very quickly. We have to adjust to how things are going, and we have to place a greater emphasis on safe travels, staycations, on domestic tourism, on eliminating the risk of businesses opening up. They're concerned about opening up and facing frivolous lawsuits. If we're able to get businesses back open, if we're able to get people back, to their jobs that they were furloughed from, or that they were permanently discharged from their jobs, then I believe that we're going to be able to effectively serve, this community that has been struggling. And my number one concern are individuals, and it's the families, it's the businesses that have shuttered, and it's making sure that people have their livelihoods back, that they have the opportunities, the economic opportunities that they used to have. So there's a lot that needs to be addressed, and I have a plan to do so that specifically involves the hospitality industry.
Thank you, Mr. Portigliati. Representative Thompson, what can be done and what should be done at the state level to address low wages without increasing unemployment?
Well, because we have so many people who do work in the hospitality industry, we're talking about basically the working poor. And the number one thing that has to be done is to make sure that everyone has a livable wage. A number of years ago, I accepted a challenge to live on minimum wage. And I found that when I went to the grocery store, I had to make different choices because I had to stay within a budget. I was doing well with the challenge until the fuel light went on in my car. Then I had to take public transportation. What normally would have taken 20 minutes took me 2 hours. And this is something that people who work in hospitality, unfortunately, face on a day-to-day basis. They don't have the right dietary options because they don't have the funds. They don't have affordable housing because they don't have the funds. They don't have access for preventative care with regard to health care because they don't have a primary physician. They can't afford insurance. So the livable wage is the very first thing that we have got to focus on, as well as workforce housing. Certainly, developers are much more interested in developing high-end communities, but we have people now living in hotels, and this predates COVID. And so what we've got to do is care for the people who make hospitality run and make sure they have a livable wage and healthy body.
Great. Thank you for that response, Representative Thompson. We're going to stick with you now as we move on to question number 2. A number of local businesses have closed because of economic stresses connected to COVID-19. What is your message to those affected in your district?
Well, we want to get those businesses back online. And we're talking about funding opportunities, grants for businesses to reopen. And we're not talking about just those that close, but attracting additional businesses. One of the opportunities Florida has lost out on for years is the film industry. When you make films on site, Not only are you talking about actors who come, but the support staff, you're talking about people who work behind the camera, and that brings money into those communities. We have lost to Georgia and North Carolina films that are based on locations in Florida. So we've got to be innovative. We've also got to attract technology, be another Simi Valley. We've got to bring manufacturing into the area. So we want to protect hospitality. We want to protect agriculture. Those are the two drivers. But at the same time, we want to expand and to diversify our economy and give some help to those businesses that close so that they can operate again. That's what PPP was designed to do. But unfortunately, those dollars went to big corporations and did not trickle down to the small businesses. So we want to develop programs like that to get those businesses up and running again.
Great. Thank you, Representative. Mr. Portigliati, over to you. A number of local businesses have closed because of COVID-19. What's your message to those affected in your district?
Sure, Greg. Like I said before, my number one objective at this time is helping individuals, families, businesses, to recover from this situation, from the economic crisis that we're seeing. We have seen thousands of people lose their jobs, countless of businesses, close permanently, as you said. And in these challenging times, I think what we have to do is it's critical that we support our families and businesses community as much as possible. How do we do that? We do that by opening up businesses in a safe way, following best practices, obviously, but we have to open up businesses so that, people can have their livelihoods back. So we can do that by reducing any and all unnecessary regulations that we have so that we can promote businesses, and anything that stifles growth, anything that would stifle the opening, the successful opening of a business, we should prevent that from happening. So unnecessary or burdensome regulations, ensuring that we also have, the best tax environment. We've had a great tax environment in the state of Florida, but we have to continue to ensure that we have a great tax environment. So this is not the time to be taxing our businesses, to be taxing individuals, because it's not going to help. It's not going to serve the needs of our community. Then we also have to place a much greater emphasis on career education. Right now, if someone has lost their job, they cannot go back to a four-year college to start all over again. We have to place a much greater emphasis on career education so that we're training today people for the jobs of the future, the 21st century jobs of the future.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Portigliati. We're going to stick with you on this next question.
Sure.
Florida legislature is only part-time. Who are you when you're not in session? What do you do? Who are you with during the other 9 months of the year? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So first and foremost, I'm a husband. I have a beautiful wife that I've been married to for 4 years. I'm also obviously a son. I'm a brother. I'm a friend to many. But in addition to the time that I spend with my family, I work in higher education. I serve as the president of Florida Christian University. We're a private Christian college located in Orlando, but we also teach in 3 languages throughout the entire world. We have a lot of students here in the US, but also in different places throughout the world. And in addition to that, I work in the real estate industry, real estate development, and particularly with senior living communities, developing senior living communities and also operating them. So that's why I say that I'm uniquely qualified to represent District 44, because I understand what it's like to make payroll for a lot of different people, for over 50 full-time employees, and to go through all these burdensome regulations, to constantly adapt to these regulations that are constantly being placed upon our businesses. And it's not easy, especially during COVID-19. It was not easy, but by the grace of God, with our senior living community, we were able to go without any problems. We didn't have one single resident, Greg, that contracted COVID-19 in our senior living community. And that took a lot of leadership. It took a lot of strategy to make sure that happened. So I am, I'm a businessman, I'm an educator, but above all, my desire is to serve the community, is to give back to the community. And that's why I'm running for the Florida House in District 44, so that I can bring effective representation to District 44.
Thank you for that answer, Mr. Portigliati. Representative Thompson, who are you the other 9 months when you're not in session? Let the voters know.
Well, as I indicated, I'm the founder of the Wells Built Museum of African American History and Culture, located in the historic Paramore District. And that's something that I initiated 20 years ago, before people were saying Black Lives Matter. I realized that Black Lives Matter and wanted to do the research, the documentation, and to share this information. I took a concept in terms of a museum in a historic location and turned it into an enterprise. I didn't come into a family business. I built a business from the ground up, and it is part of the hospitality industry, the tourism industry, that is the backbone of the Central Florida area. And that takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of my time. But I also work with groups and organizations that are devoted to breaking down barriers between different groups. I recently worked with a group in Lake County to redirect a Confederate statue from Lake County that the community did not want, and redirect it to the Olustee battlefield in Baker County near Tallahassee. So I have bridged divides with people. I have the cross-cultural competency that allows me to be as comfortable in Paramore as I am in Windermere. So that's how I spend my time, working with people, bringing people together, helping us all know about who we are.
Thank you, Representative. This next question is also going to be for you. In past years, bills have been proposed in the Florida House regarding the obstruction of traffic by protests and demonstrators. What do you believe should be the role of state or local government regarding this issue?
I think that people have the right to peacefully assemble. They do not have the right to harm people or property in the process. And so I think if we can work with people to say, yes, you have a right to protest, yes, you have a right to voice your opinion, but to do it in a peaceful way. And I had to do that because Derek Chauvin, the police officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck for almost 9 minutes, has a second home in Windermere, the district where I represent. And so I had to work through 2 weekends of protests there, and to work with law enforcement at the same time to make sure that there were no unnecessary clashes between peaceful protests and between law and order. I support both, and I think that you can have both simultaneously. I do not believe in, I think you have to focus on de-escalation, and I do not believe in a lot of what I have seen in terms of rubber bullets and tear gas and batons that have been taken to peaceful protesters. That's what America is all about, exercising our First Amendment right. And sometimes it's necessary to get out in the streets to do that. And coming out of the civil rights movement, I understand civil protests and peaceful demonstrations.
Thank you very much. Mr. Portigliati, what do you believe should be the role of state government regarding this issue?
Well, first of all, Greg, I hate the divisiveness going on in the country right now. This is not, who we are. It doesn't define us. I think it's just a rough patch that we're going through. I believe that we are called to love, one another, to love our neighbors. This is the second greatest commandment in the Bible, and I truly believe in it. That's why I'm serving too. I believe that one of the ways in which we can love one another is to serve. I do believe that this is a situation that requires both sides to abide by the rule of law. Peaceful protests and vigorous arguments, they're a hallmark of our society. But lawlessness, violence, and property destruction should never be tolerated and are completely counterproductive to what we're trying to accomplish as a nation. So everyone, absolutely everyone, has the right to peacefully protest. It's a constitutional right that we have. It's our First Amendment right, freedom of expression. But no one has the right to harm other people, to loot businesses, to interfere with other people's liberties and rights. I think our rights go only as far as it doesn't interfere with other people's rights. So I don't agree with it. I think we have to uphold law and order, and I'm proud to be endorsed by the Police Benevolent Association, by law enforcement, and to promote, and to promote the law enforcement, and to give them resources, and to do everything that we can to protect them, because they're protecting us. They're risking their lives for us as well.
Thank you very much for your response. This next question is also for you.
Mm-hmm.
District 44, it's evenly split between Republicans, Democrats, MPA voters. When voting in Tallahassee, how will you balance your party affiliation against the local electorate where 2/3 of your residents in your district are not your party?
Well, I'm going to do the will of the people. If you know, I'm going to listen. I think my job as a legislator is to listen to the people. It's to report what the issues are here in the district to Tallahassee, and then to report back, because what happens very often is that we hear from politicians when they're running for office, and this has happened throughout my whole life. You know, I hear from politicians when they're running, but then you don't hear from them again. So I think that we need to, you know, as representatives, as public servants, we report to Tallahassee, we report back to the people, and we serve, you know, their needs. You know, people's needs don't have party affiliation behind them. And what we're going through now, you know, the economic situation that we're going through now, that doesn't have a party affiliation to it as well. We need to ensure that individuals, that families, they have the livelihood that they need. They have, you know, food on the table. They're able to, you know, make ends meet. And at this time that we're living, even in District 44, which is a very blessed district, a lot of people are struggling. And just to clarify something, I went through the whole process of, like I said, I mentioned, I started out bussing tables. I worked a lot of different jobs. I didn't come into a family business, as Representative Thompson suggested. I built our family businesses along with the family. I have been working in the family businesses for a long time, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. And it took a lot of hard work, a lot of diligence, a lot of dedication to get where we are. So I don't like to downgrade what other people have done, you know, to stand out, you know, for yourself. I think that what I've gone through, a lot of other people are going through at the time as well.
Thank you very much. Representative Thompson, how will you balance your party affiliation against the local electorate where 2/3 of your residents in your district are not in your party?
Well, as the Orlando Sentinel indicated, I do stay tethered to my community. I have town hall meetings in the district. One of the things that I have done, not only in this district, but in a much larger district, is to visit the city council meetings. Every city council meeting in this district has had an opportunity to talk with me, to get a presentation from me with regard to what I did during session, how I have assisted them. I listened to them, to their concerns, and I'm here to serve everyone, regardless of party affiliation. In the last session, I had meetings at Windermere High School, where I invited parents, I invited teachers, I invited resource officers in terms of law enforcement to come together and let's talk about how do we keep our schools safe. I had a town hall meeting at Bridgewater Middle School here also in the district. So I stay connected to the constituents who elected me to be their voice in Tallahassee. And I have continued to be re-elected because I stay connected. And it's not an issue of just staying connected when I'm running, it's staying connected throughout the year so that people can bring their concerns to me and I can address those concerns in Tallahassee and work across the aisle to get things done.
Thank you for your response. This next question is also for you, Representative Thompson. The eviction moratorium across the state of Florida has been repeatedly extended. However, some argue that the moratorium only provides short-term relief to tenants and is harmful to landlords without addressing the long-term issues of housing supply and affordability. What is your long-term plan to address what could become a housing crisis?
Well, the Sadowski Fund is one way to do that, and that is the fund that helps us to have the dollars locally to give workforce housing that is going to take up some of the people who are going to be evicted. But in terms of the evictions and the moratorium, it has done very little to protect multi-family dwellings and people who own, let's say, duplexes and they're not considered residential. It has done very little for them. But I am concerned that we are going to see evictions coming down the pike once this moratorium has ended, and we're going to have to help people find alternate locations and sources for housing. And we're going to have to support them in terms of down payments for additional houses that they may not have because of COVID and how they have been affected economically due to the pandemic. And so we have to think now about what happens in December and what are we going to do to address the needs of these families when the eviction moratorium has ended. And those are things that I have been working on.
Great. Mr. Portigliati, what is your long-term plan to address what could become a housing crisis?
First of all, I believe that the eviction moratorium has helped tremendously. I know a lot of people that have, obviously, as I mentioned, families are struggling. They're going through a lot of, challenges, and a lot of them, if it were not for the moratorium, they would be in a lot of trouble right now, losing, where, again, it's their livelihood, it's where they sleep, it's where they live. So I think it's been tremendously helpful. We do have an affordable housing issue in the state of Florida. We have it in the United States, but we have it specifically too in Central Florida, in the state of Florida and Central Florida. If the housing funds, if Sadowski Fund was used for its intended purposes, we would create so many jobs. We would help our economy, significantly if we were to do that. But obviously, the legislature has not. Has chipped away at that fund or has used the funds for different purposes. Just recently, in the last legislative session, it was passed that it would be used for the intended purposes, which was great. But then I think there's been some changes after that as well. But if it were used for its intended purposes, over 30,000 jobs would be created. If I'm not mistaken, over $4.4 billion dollars in positive economic impact would take place in our region, in the state of Florida as well, based on a study that was conducted concerning the Sadowski Fund and the use of the Sadowski Fund. So I think first and foremost, we have to use the funds for their intended purposes. It's been created for a specific reason. We just have to make sure that we use it for that reason. In District 44, we need it a lot because we have a lot of essential workers who don't have a place to live in the district because of affordability.
Great. Thank you for your response there. This question will also go to you. This district has historically generated and benefited from tourist development tax funds. In light of COVID-19 and decreased tourism, we cannot expect the same generation of funds. So this is a two-part question. First, how do we support an industry we've so heavily depended on? And second, do you believe there should be changes to the allowed uses of the TDT funds?
I believe the TDT funds should be used for their intended purposes. Again, I think when we create a fund, we should stick to the purpose of the fund. If for any reason, and this is something that I've addressed with the hospitality industry and other funds that have been created, if for any reason we go through a huge economic crisis and we have to tap into those funds for other reasons, then every stakeholder needs to be a part of the conversation and they have to agree to it as well. So with the tourism industry, it's one of our driving forces. It's one of the most, one of the driving forces of our economy. So we have to maintain those funds for their intended purposes. We have to promote tourism in the state of Florida. We have to continue to bring people here to Central Florida. We have less than 300,000 people living in Orlando, in the city of Orlando. That's the population, but we have over 75 million people that come through our region because of the parks, because of tourism. So our region needs the tourism dollars, and we get those dollars by promoting tourism. So I think with the hospitality industry specifically, like I said earlier, we have to now more than ever, we have to find ways, innovative, strategic ways to overcome the hurdles that we're facing now. One of the ways in which we do that, this is a solution, is that we focus on safe travel and safe stays, on staycations as well. There's a lot that can be done so that we can promote tourism at the local level. Domestic tourism is something that we're going to have to be focusing on a lot more than we did in the past, so that we can get those jobs back. We can get places of employment back opened.
Great. Thank you for your response. Representative Thompson, over to you. First, how do we support an industry we've so heavily depended on, the tourism industry? And second, do you believe that there should be changes to the allowed use of the TDT funds?
Well, to support the industry, I will be working very closely with Visit Florida to market Florida as a place that is safe and that follows CDC guidelines so that visitors feel comfortable returning to our community. That's the first thing that has to happen. We have lost tourists because at one time we had cross-border shopping. You would go to the malls and see people from South America and other places that came to shop. We've got to market to them as well. And we want to make sure that Visit Florida has predictability. Right now, we're dealing with a very short budget. and they need certainty so that they can plan long range. So that's one of the things that that I would be doing. With regard to the use of the TDT funds, and you heard Mr. Portagliati talk about the 70 plus million people who visit this area. They're not going to come if the infrastructure is not in place. If you don't have the roads, if you don't have police safety, if you don't have hospitals and all of those things. So I think that we need to begin to think about other uses that those funds might support in addition to promoting tourism. I certainly don't think we should take anything away in terms of TDT funds, but I am on record as having voted to use TDT funds in the Panhandle for other uses.
Thank you. And Mr. Portagliati, over to you for a 30-second rebuttal. Your name was evoked.
Thank you, sir. Well, they are going to come because they were already coming. These numbers are not hypothetical numbers. These are real numbers. We've had 75 million visitors coming to the state of Florida, specifically to our region, to District 44, to go to the parks, to go to the tourism corridor. And because of my stances, because of my belief that we should maintain TDT for their intended purposes, I'm also honored to have been endorsed by CFHLA, the Central Florida Hotel and Lodging Association, which is the association that oversees all of the hotel and lodging in the state of Florida.
Great, thank you. And Representative Thompson, obviously, as a state representative, all of your decisions and all of your votes affect everyone across Florida, and over 10% of Floridians are still uninsured, a figure that's been worsened by the current pandemic and job losses. What do we do to make sure healthcare is accessible to people across the state of Florida?
I have been working for years to expand Medicaid. We're talking about the working poor. They make a little bit more than is allowable under the federal policy of poverty guidelines, but they don't make enough for private insurance. So I would continue to work to expand Medicaid. I served on the board of Health Central Hospital, and I saw the indigent care that the hospital gave to people who ended up in the emergency room for their first point of contact for health care. They did not have a primary care physician because they didn't have insurance. And so they come to the emergency rooms where we have to admit them, the doctors have to treat them, any medication that we need has to be given to them. So we were literally subsidizing the care for these individuals when we could have prepared for it on the front end and expanded Medicaid. So I would continue to work for that. When you go to the emergency room, that is the most expensive form of healthcare that you can get. And so rather than subsidizing on the back end, I'm saying let's expand Medicaid, which will help businesses. They don't have to provide insurance because Medicaid takes care of it for them. And much of the money, which is our money that goes to DC, now would come back to benefit Floridians.
Thank you for your response. Mr. Portagliati, over to you. What do we do to make sure healthcare is accessible to residents across Florida?
Well, first and foremost, I think that it's time that we stop shifting the costs to consumers. And we start making healthcare a lot more accessible. That's what we have to do. The way to do that is to, just making it more affordable, because, you never know what you're going to get when you go to the doctor, when you go through a surgery, when, something unexpected happens. You pay a lot more usually than you expect. And deductibles are really high, premiums are high, and deductibles are really high, all because of the healthcare costs that are pretty high. So I think when you look at ways that we can have smarter coverage, ways in which we can reduce the bureaucracy and the fraud in the healthcare system, and we need to stop the frivolous lawsuits that are taking place as well, and allow consumers to consult with doctors and receive prescriptions online as well, which is something that we've started doing a lot more because of COVID. Telemedicine, I think we have to continue to encourage telemedicine and expand upon it, because this is the wave of the future, right? So I'm also honored to be endorsed by the Florida Medical Association. It was a very important endorsement for me, especially because of the situation that we're living now with COVID-19, all of the challenges that we're facing. So I'm excited to work with the Florida Medical Association to bring about solutions that we need for Floridians and to make healthcare a lot more accessible for Floridians.
Great, thank you. And this next question, passed into this past year, 2020, the Clean Waterways Act and Environmental Accountability Act focuses on deterrence, penalties, inspections, and reporting regarding land-based sources of pollution. Do you support further regulations, or do you think this goes far enough?
Who is that question for, Greg?
That was for you, Mr. Portigliati.
Thank you, Greg. Just clarifying. So I believe we have to ensure that we are maintaining a sustainable country, a sustainable environment, that we focus on clean energy, obviously, and water is a concern. With over 1,000 people moving into Florida every single day, obviously water is becoming more and more scarce. And the quality of water as well is being impacted, obviously, by everything that is happening. So we need to focus on renewable energy sources, and lead America's transition to a clean energy economy. Help protect our grid security as well. Provide good, if we do all of that, we're going to provide good paying jobs for Americans. These are the kinds of jobs that I'm talking about when I say that we need to focus on technical, vocational, career-related jobs. There's a lot of that in the renewable sustainability, renewable, sustainable, clean energy environment that we're seeking. So when it comes to water, I think that we have to employ sound science. We have to look at science. What is science telling us? What is the data? What are scientists telling us to do? And let's look at those solutions, and let's employ those solutions. Sensible, we have to make sensible investments. Whatever investments we have to do that are sensible to maintain a good water quality and quantity as well in the state of Florida, we have to do that as well. And adhere to best management practices that have been set out, but a lot of people are not adhering to those best management practices.
So just to clarify, do you support or do you not support further regulations?
I'm not in favor of additional regulations. I think we have to focus on sustainability, on clean energy, on, clean water and enough quantity of water. But I'm usually not in favor of additional regulations. I am for reducing regulations.
Got it. Representative Thompson, do you support further regulations, or do you think this goes far enough?
I think we need regulations with regard to the use of fertilizers. Part of the problem that we are facing has to do with nutrients that flow into our waterways. And therefore, we have blue-green algae, we have fish kills, and we saw what happened here in Florida a number of years ago with all of these kind of problems. And no one wants to take responsibility. We have agricultural industries. They have to take responsibility. We want our lawns to be lush and green, and we use fertilizers for that. We have golf courses as well. And all of us have to come to the table because we share one planet, and we all have to figure out how to leave this planet to our children, our offspring, and it will be inherited. And so we've got to make sure that we have something to leave behind. I've been endorsed by the Sierra Club. I've been endorsed by the Florida Conservation Voters. I've been endorsed by the Environmental Caucus because of my very strong stance on protecting our environment. And that's going to mean enforcing regulations, making everybody responsible for their actions that contributes to a lot of the problems that we're facing right now.
Thank you very much. And Representative Thompson, this question will also go to you. The state has passed preemptive legislation, so the local governments cannot pass their own regulations on certain issues. Examples include firearms, environmental controls, and vacation rentals. Which issues should the state legislature preempt, and which issues should remain under local control? Why or why not?
I really believe that there should be local solutions for local problems. I am a strong proponent and supporter of home rule. That's why we have city councils That's why we have county commissioners. That's why we have school boards. And these are people who are closest to the constituents. While we're away in Tallahassee, they are here working. And so I think they should be allowed to put in place regulations that work in their community. There's no one size fits all. And that's what happens when you preempt decisions to Tallahassee, 200 miles away, that impact people here in Central Florida. So I am not in favor of preemptions. I think if a community feels that prohibiting plastic straws is good for their community, they ought to be able to do that. They ought to be able to make rules with regard to guns, the use of cannabis, or whatever works for their community. So I am a home rule proponent. I am a strong advocate for finding local solutions for local problems and empowering the local elected officials to do their job rather than assuming that we have all of the answers in Tallahassee.
Mr. Portigliotti, over to you. Which issues should the state legislature preempt and which issues should remain under control of local government?
I believe, Greg, that all politics are local, obviously, and they start at the local level. And I think we ought to give a voice to those representing us at the local level and give them the ability to represent us. So I think there are opportunities for improvement for sure. I think, specifically to your question, to address your question, I think business permits and licensing should be something that is more at the state level, preempted at the state level. Something that I don't think we should see, especially given the circumstances that we're living now, the challenging times that we're living now. We shouldn't see so much burdensome regulation on individuals trying to, come up with a new profession, a new trade, where they have to get a license at the state level. Then they come down and in their municipality or their county, they have to obtain another license, pay for another fee, wait for another week to a month or so to be able to get an additional license and then get to work. I think now more than ever, we have to be looking at opportunities, at ways in which we can make things easier for people, again, to get people back on their feet. So there are things that need to be at the state level. Things need to be at the federal level, state level, and local level appropriately. When it comes to wages, for example, that's, it's a state issue. It's not a local issue. That's not something that needs to be decided at the local issue. But specifically, licensing is something that I would like to tackle the first day that I get to Tallahassee.
Great. Thank you for your response. Mr. Portigliotti, this question will also go to you. So far in 2020, legislators in the state of Florida have assisted over 60,000 people with filing unemployment benefits. If elected, would you propose any changes to the state unemployment system?
Yes, absolutely. I empathize with people that are going through these challenging situations. I hear stories all the time. Like I mentioned earlier, people that are, that haven't had a job for 6 months. They filed for their unemployment claim. They didn't hear from the government for months. And when this happened, Greg, I put my cell phone number out for people to call me with questions and for me to help in any way that I could. And I received a lot of calls, Greg. And these were people saying to me, I applied, it's been 2 months, I haven't heard back. It's been 3 months, I haven't heard back. So I would reach out to other legislators in Tallahassee so that they could help, so that they could get the help they needed. And I believe what happened with the unemployment system is completely unacceptable. I'm sure that we did not anticipate the amount of demand that the system had, obviously, with the COVID-19 situation. Obviously, we were planning for this. We had a contingency in place, but that contingency most likely was for a hurricane and not so much for a pandemic. So we didn't anticipate what was going to happen. So obviously there was an extra burden placed on the system. But one thing that needs to be addressed is the communication issue, is people not hearing back from the office, from the government. But there are other issues that need to be addressed. And I think for us to address those issues, we have to conduct a comprehensive audit of the entire agency to see what needs to be improved and then get on it right away. As soon as we get to Tallahassee next legislative session, we have to fix the system.
Thank you. Representative Thompson, what would you propose, if any, changes to the state unemployment system?
Well, we need a total revamp of that system. It's a system I voted against in 2011 when I was in the House. And I voted against it because it did a number of things that are injurious to people here in Central Florida and all over the state of Florida. First of all, it took the eligibility time for getting benefits from 26 weeks down to 12 weeks. And you're expected to be reemployed in 12 weeks, and that's not realistic. It also did nothing for seasonal workers. It was focused exclusively on what was considered full-time workers. It lowered the benefits to $275 a week. And if you know what it costs to rent a place here in Central Florida, that simply is not going to cut it. It's not going to do it. And it was a system that was designed to fail. It is so cumbersome to even get online to file your application for assistance. And I think there needs to be an investigation in terms of how that was put in place and who benefited from it and who profited from it. And so my very first order of business, getting back to Tallahassee, is going to be a revamp of the unemployment system and a whole lot of things that need to change there.
Great, thank you. Representative Thompson, next question's for you. On July 1st of this year, a new law in Florida began to require the consent of a minor's parents before an abortion can be performed. Do you believe this legislation moves in the right direction or the wrong direction?
I think it moves in the wrong direction. If a child has not talked with their parent about something as serious as considering an abortion, there has to be a reason why. And if you're talking about getting consent, unfortunately, there has been incest in some families. And so it may be the parent who is the problem. And therefore, you have to get the consent of the parent if you're considering an abortion. And many young people don't share this with their families because they're afraid of being abused, afraid of being kicked out of the home. You cannot legislate good family relations, and to require a young person to go through this, to talk to a family member, when they could talk to a school counselor, they could talk to any number of caring adults, but to require that they get the consent of the parent puts them at a very strong disadvantage. They can get a waiver from a judge, but you're talking about a minor who finds herself in a situation that she can't cope with for whatever reason. And then how does she navigate going to court to get this waiver? We already had notification. You have to notify the parent. So why now put on top of that consent? So I do not think it goes in the right direction.
Mr. Portigliotti, what are your thoughts on this legislation?
I think notifying the parents after the fact doesn't do them any good. I think that minors, when we think of minors and their ability, their cognitive ability to make decisions of that magnitude, decisions that are going to impact them for the rest of their lives, they ought to be made with the consent, with the advice and consent of their parents. So I think it moves in the right direction. I think that it's a great thing that happened, and I think that parents of minors should be involved in that decision, at least to give them some wisdom, some words of wisdom, some impart onto them their experiences, because when you're a minor, you just don't know a whole lot about life. So I think this bill does move in the right direction.
Great, thank you. And this next question is for you, Mr. Portigliotti. Do you support certain changes to mandatory minimum prison sentences? And if yes, what changes should be made? And should mandatory minimum sentences for certain categories of crime be kept in act?
Yes, I do actually. I believe that there's a lot that we can do in the criminal justice system, in our Department of Corrections as well. Florida's criminal justice system is overburdened, and it's the question that we have to ask ourselves is: are we over incarcerating people, and are we truly rehabilitating people? If we are rehabilitating people, are we rehabilitating enough people? That should be the question. I am all for the rule of law. I am all for upholding the rule of law and also holding people accountable, right? But I'm also for redemption. I also believe in redemption, and that, people ought to be given a second chance, especially if what they committed was not a violent offense and if it was their first time committing an offense. So giving them that second chance, I think they deserve it if that's the case. Mandatory minimums I don't think they're serving our public, to be completely honest with you. And I think that judges should have more discretion when it comes to sentencing first-time nonviolent offenders. I think we are giving them a cookie-cutter approach of what to do, and for that reason, we have an overburdened system that has way too many people. They're not getting rehabilitated fast enough, and then we have all the issues that we know of. So there's a lot that needs to be done, and something else to consider is other opportunities for gain time. What can they do so that they can leave sooner? Again, if they have a good conduct and if they are adhering to the law.
Thank you, Mr. Portigliati. Representative Thompson, what changes, if any, should be made to mandatory minimum sentences?
I think if you harm another person, you should be punished. But if you harm yourself, you should be treated. And unfortunately, we have spent a lot of money imprisoning people who have harmed themselves. And they are nonviolent individuals who should not be incarcerated. We have a prison industrial complex where people are getting rich from putting people in prison. We have private prisons where the motivation is not rehabilitation, but keeping the beds full. And so we do have these mandatory minimums that have been put in place to keep those beds full. And I don't think that it gives judges the discretion to do the kinds of things that they should be able to do using their judgment, working directly with the individual. And so we need to get rid of many of the mandatory minimums that we have in place in Tallahassee and stop building up the prison industrial complex that over incarcerates, for the most part, Black and brown people. And that is what a lot of those institutions were designed to do. And many of them are in rural areas where they are the economy of those particular areas. And that is not what we need to do, is to profit off of the misery of our fellow man.
Great. Thank you, Representative Thompson. This next question is for you. Due to Florida's requirement for a balanced budget and lower tax revenues, budget cuts will be unavoidable. What areas would you prioritize for large, medium, and minor cutbacks, which for the status quo and which for large, medium, or minor increases?
Well, one of the things that I would target would be the tax breaks that we give to major corporations. The corporate taxes and the refunds that we give to corporations that don't pay the corporate taxes in the first place. They're getting refunds for taxes that they did not pay. And so if those funds were made available, we could pay teachers more. We could do more with regard to our roads and healthcare and so many other needs. But we have a tax structure and we have a mindset that it is about profits over people. And therefore, when the budget is put together, it favors those individuals who are able to make large campaign contributions, for example. It favors multinational corporations that are located outside of the state of Florida. And if they say that they're not domiciled in Florida, they don't have to pay the taxes in Florida. When we look at brick and mortar businesses compared to online businesses, we need to look at bringing about equality there and putting them on a level playing field. You have to pay taxes if you go to the store here, but if you get it online, you don't have to pay taxes. So there are a myriad of things that we need to be looking at because, as you say, we are going to have some holes in the budget because of the damage to the economy because of the pandemic.
Great, thank you. Mr. Portigliati, over to you. What cuts would you support? What increases would you support?
Yeah, thankfully, the state of Florida has the balanced budget amendment. So I think we're in a much better position than most other states. And thanks to our fiscal responsibility, we also were able to create a rainy day fund that has helped us, tremendously during this crisis that we're going through. So I think we're much better positioned than a lot of other states, like I said, and also because of the CARES Act funds that came to us. I think that's going to help us. That's going to carry us through the next legislative session. I think we're going to have to take that same fiscally responsible, approach to the next session and subsequent sessions, and make sure that we're funding those things that are absolutely necessary first. First we emphasize and we focus on essential services, right? And then we look at other things that we would like to fund in agencies and programs and projects and and things that that are just desires and not needs. So that fiscally responsible approach is going to have to be implemented more so than ever. And I think one of the things, to your question that we have to look at, we have to revisit is just, for example, there was a project that was recently approved, a transportation project for $10 million. And it's projects like these that I think that, they circumvent FDOT's 5-year work plan. And they're great projects, but they're not necessarily required at this time. So around this time, we're going to have to be a little more careful with projects like that.
Great, thank you. This next question goes to you, Mr. Portigliatti. As a state representative, you can only propose 6 bills. What are your top priorities?
Sure. Again, my top priority is going to be focused on, individuals, families, businesses opening up, whatever we can do to deregulate businesses, to get, businesses back up in a safe way so that we can give people their jobs back. Deregulation is a big thing for me. Coming from a business background, I understand firsthand what it's like to go through all of that. I think we need to focus on responsible free enterprise to promote growth and development more than ever. And one of the things that we have to do to promote this growth is to place a greater emphasis on career, on vocational technological programs. One way to do that is to create state partnerships with these career institutions so that we can give individuals the opportunity, sort of a fast track approach for them to get a new license, a new career, something that is fast, something that will bring them, resources right away, as opposed to going to a traditional, 2, 3, 4-year university or college. So something along those lines is something that I would absolutely focus on and, start working on right away if I have the honor to get to Tallahassee and represent our district. And in addition to that, something that I mentioned earlier, which is the licensing. I think we have to have more uniformity when it comes to licensing in the state of Florida, so that we're not imposing more burden on people that have to get a license at the state level, and then additional steps at the local level as well. So making that process a little more uniform.
Thank you, Mr. Portigliatti. And Representative Thompson, over to you. What are the 6 bills that you're going to focus on if reelected?
Number one would be revamping the very broken unemployment system. I have spent all of my time since I have come back from Tallahassee helping my constituents wade through the maze of getting unemployment assistance. And I have worked directly with the agency heads, not calling other representatives, because they're serving their constituents as well. So that is number one. And then dealing with social justice and having all people feel that they're safe and that they are not going to be victimized and subject to abuse by law enforcement. So one of the things I want to do is, at a minimum, have a database in the state of Florida that identifies through all 67 counties, police departments, law enforcement agencies, school resource officers, where there are excessive complaints of abuse of power. Now, the officer who knelt on George Floyd's neck had 15 complaints of excessive force. That should have raised a red flag. So we need a database so that we can track where the hot spots are and then target with training, perhaps suspension, decertification, termination, whatever is warranted. So that would be the second thing that I would want to do. And yes, we have to look at our schools and the curricula within the schools. And I think that any school that gets tax dollars should be held to the same standards as public schools. And you certainly, when you go to these private schools and you incur tremendous debt, like some of these universities, hopefully your credits could transfer somewhere, and we're not seeing that.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. Now we are coming towards the end of our debate. One thing special that we as an organization do for our debates is we give candidates the opportunity to really go ahead and address the issues that they are seeing on the campaign trail. So we want to give each of you the opportunity to ask each other one question. Now, there will not be a back and forth rebuttal. It will be the same time limit, 90 seconds to ask. But Representative Thompson, we will let you go first. What is one question that you would like to ask Mr. Portigliotti?
I'd like to ask Mr. Portigliotti how responsive he is to the individuals who are in your senior care centers, because I'm hearing concerns about the level of care that people do or do not receive there. And can you tell me what you do to stay in touch with those families?
Absolutely. Yes, I am very proud of what we've built, the community that we've built. Honestly, what we do is we serve those that would not have the ability to be anywhere else, especially an A-rated community at the affordability that we offer. We're one of the only communities in Central Florida that take Medicaid, being an A-rated community. So we have all of the amenities that you can possibly imagine. We treat them with dignity, with love. They love being there. We have amazing testimonials online. You can just visit our YouTube page. If you go to Excellence Assisted Living and you go to our YouTube page, you'll see testimonials from our residents, and they're very pleased, very happy to be there. But a community like that anywhere else will cost, upwards of $4,000, $5,000, $6,000, even more than that. And we are one of the only communities that take Medicaid. So that shows, why we're in it, why we're doing what we're doing. I'm very proud of the work that we've done, of the residents that we have. I go there on a regular basis. I talk to them on a regular basis. I have a lot of grandmas, a lot of grandpas that I get to call, my own. And I go to Excellence Assisted Living Facility and I get to talk to them, pick their brain, and just, ask for words of wisdom. And it's an amazing experience for me. So thank you for the question, Representative Thompson. It's something that I'm very proud of what we've built, what we've done, and of the service, the level of service that we provide to our residents as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Portigliotti, you may go ahead and ask Representative Thompson a question.
Sure. Representative, my question to you is concerning, the recent developments, the recent case with Judge Francis. I believe, and I think a lot of voters, a lot of even Democrats and Republicans believe that instead of focusing on a historic opportunity to have more diversity in the Supreme Court, to put the first Caribbean American on the Supreme Court, their concern is that you're playing political games. Their concern is that this is politics as usual, because you have filed a lawsuit against the governor and then you insisted upon it again. And then your victory is very well our loss. You may consider it a victory, but how we see it, how people are seeing it, is that it's a loss for the state of Florida in terms of diversity. So my question to you is, you claim to be very multicultural. You claim to have to be a very diverse, person that encourages minorities. I was the chairman of the City of Orlando Minority Business Enterprise Certification Board, where I helped a lot of minority-owned businesses obtain certifications to help them, have a competitive edge with other companies. My question to you is, you claim to be one thing, but your actions are showing something different. Why are you spending so much time filing a lawsuit against the state government instead of focusing on the issues that affect District 44 and the state of Florida? The way people are seeing it is that this is just politics as usual, and it's unacceptable.
The reason I filed the lawsuit is because we all should be governed by the rule of law, including the governor of Florida. And it was the governor, not the state government. It was the governor that I filed the lawsuit against. He maintains that he is devoted to diversity. He had two opportunities in 2019 to place African Americans on the Florida Supreme Court. He appointed Justice Luck and Justice Lagoa, who left very shortly afterward to go to a federal court in Atlanta, Georgia. And he really had a commitment to diversity. He could have appointed two African Americans at that time. Then he had another set of opportunities, and he appointed Justice Coriel, who is qualified, and the only African American out of 7 who applied. Many of them had been members of the Florida Bar for 20 plus years, judges for decades. The only one that he could find was a member of the Federalist Society, which he is also a member of, a person who shares his ideology and his perspective, and who is unqualified as ruled by the Florida Supreme Court, not as ruled by me. The Florida Supreme Court said that he exceeded his authority, he violated the Constitution. He took an oath, as I did. When I was elected, I put my hand on the Bible, I raised my hand to God, and I swore that I would uphold the Constitution of the country and the state. I meant it, the governor did not. That's why I filed the suit.
Well, thank you both for your questions, and thank you both for your responses. Now we will give 2 minutes each for your closing statements, closing arguments. Representative Thompson, you will go first.
Thank you very much, and thank you all for this opportunity. I think that no one is above the law, and all of us, when we take these oaths, when we are elected officials, need to think about all of the members of Florida. And what this lawsuit that my opponent brings up, what it means is that we want a judiciary that is fair, impartial, and competent. We have a person who doesn't meet the constitutional requirements, who's recommended to serve on the highest court in the land. And any Floridian who might have a case that lands in the Florida Supreme Court should be assured that the justices there are going to decide based on the law, not based on a political agenda, which the governor has to stack the courts with people who have a particular ideology, but they're going to follow the law. And I think the governor should lead by example. He did not follow the law. The Supreme Court ruled that he violated the Constitution. He exceeded his authority, and he wants to place her there anyway, rather than to rescind an unlawful appointment that he made. And I am just shocked that Mr. Pratagliati would support something like that. We need to be concerned about competence rather than color. She's African American, yes, but there were highly qualified other African Americans who could have served. And I'm saying now, the court said you must choose from the present list that you have. And by eliminating her, that means everyone else on the list is white. I think competence is above color, and I will always think that way. I remember living in this country where there were jobs advertised that said Blacks may not apply, should not apply. I thought then that competence, experience, education, qualification should be beyond color. I believe that then, I believe it now, and I will continue to act in that manner.
Thank you, Representative Thompson, very much for participating this evening.
Thank
Mr.
you for having
Portigliati, over to you for your 2 minutes.
Thank you, Greg. Again, thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to share with everyone a little bit, right? And Representative Thompson, I think I agree with you. Competence is always comes before, race or anything else. But I think the way that it looks to everyone is that just because a Republican made the appointment, you are opposing it. This is a judge who, quite frankly, has lived the American dream as well, just as I have. Who came from nothing. She came to this country and she fought very hard to be where she is. And she's a judge now. And she was appointed to the Supreme Court of the state so that she can serve her state and give back to her community. And she is someone, she is a Caribbean American. It's a great opportunity for the state of Florida to have diversity in our Supreme Court. And then obviously because of partisan politics, this happened. So it's not just me who's upset about it. It's a lot of Floridians. And I would wager to say the majority of Floridians, even Democrats, have come out and stated that they're upset about it. But what I want to say, Greg, is that when I'm out there talking to voters, what I hear the most is that, they don't even know who their elected official is. And I want to make sure that they do. I want to make sure that they have someone that is accessible to them, that they can just say, yeah, my representative is Bruno Portigliati. He came to my door. He knocked on my door. I can reach him very easily. He gave me his cell phone number. And not what we have at the moment where most people don't know who the representative is. I am running because of a desire to serve. I don't need the sacrifices that we go through, to serve, to be in public office, these are tremendous sacrifices, but I do it because of my desire to serve, to give back to my community. My life is led by a quote by Pericles that says, "What we leave behind is not engraved in stone monuments, but woven into the lives of others." My desire is to leave a lasting impact, a legacy behind, and to effectively represent District 44, because we desperately need it, especially now after COVID-19. I know we can do more, and I know that I can do it. So that's why I appreciate the opportunity, and I humbly ask for people's support.
Thank you very much.
May I respond? May I
We
respond?
will give you both 30 more seconds then, starting with you, Representative
Thank
Thompson.
you. Thank you so much. Since I've been in the legislature, there have been Republican governors. Jeb Bush was governor when I was elected. We had Charlie Crist. We had Rick Scott. Now we have Ron DeSantis. All of them made appointments to the Florida Supreme Court. I have never opposed an appointment before, so it has nothing to do with a Republican governor, and it's disingenuous for Mr. Portagliatti to maintain that that is my motivation for challenging an unqualified, ineligible person, as ruled by the Florida Supreme Court, for sitting on the highest court in the land. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Thompson. And somebody has to get the last word today. That will be you, Mr. Portagliatti.
It's
30 more
disingenuous.
seconds.
This is not me. This is the state of Florida. These are people in your caucus, in your Democratic Party, Representative Thompson, that are upset, that are not satisfied with what happened. Like I said, I believe that you may see it as a victory, but I think to the state of Florida, to diversity, to the multicultural community, to impartiality, there was a loss for all of us. So it's very unfortunate. That's why I'm running. We need a different kind of representation. We need someone who's going to work with both sides and not just bring down a nominee because of partisan politics.
Great. Well, thank you both for your participation this evening. On behalf of the Commission on Local Debates, we really thank you, and thank you for both vying to represent your district. Again, these were all questions that were fielded by community members, ran past our board that is made up of Republicans, Democrats, and NPA, all equally. And again, we really feel that we get this message across to the community and make sure that their questions are answered. So thank you both. We wish you both the best of luck going into November. And again, thank you for your participation.
Thank you, Greg, very much. Thank you, Representative Thompson. Have a great evening.
Thank you all. Have a good rest of your evening.
You as well. Thank you.
Thank you.